In your third remote learning lesson, we're going to take a look at starting to get ready to plan your next piece of writing. Now, it's going to be a really, really simple lesson. All you're going to need for this is 2 colour pens and some paper. If you've got plain paper, that might be easier, but lined paper should work as well. And all of your work today is going to be on paper. You're not going to type anything in. And then at the end of the lesson, we're going to ask you to take a couple of pictures of the work you've done and submit it just through Google Classroom in exactly the same way you have been so far. If you're not sure how to submit pictures to Google Classroom, there is another video explaining how to do that and how to attach photographs to work. Now we're going to start the lesson just like we would any other, with a starter quiz. So take a look at the quiz there on your screen. What you might want to do is, because we're going to do all the work on paper today, you might want to play this video maybe on a computer so you've got a bigger screen and you can read the screen easier. You might want to cast it to a television if you know how to do that, but you don't need to use your computer for anything apart from watching this video today, so get it as big as you can. Right, read through those definitions from your knowledge organiser. From memory, can you say who are they talking about, what are they talking about, where or when? Pause the video now and have a go at that starter quiz from memory. Pause the video now. Brilliant. Right, now can you change over to a different colour pen? We're going to self-check those answers that you've just had a go at. So make sure you're writing in the incorrect answers, because by correcting your own answers, you'll be more likely to remember it correctly next time. So number 1, the revenge-based system was known as a blood feud. 2, a peasant who had the freedom to choose which lord they worked for and could be mostly found in the Danelaw part of England is a curl. Please check your spelling of that. It's C-E-O-R-L. 3 is describing the Wergild system, spelled W-E-R-G-I-L-D. 4 is a description of Louis Pasteur's germ theory, the discovery that finally explained the causes of many illnesses, disproving old ideas like miasma and spontaneous generation. 5 is a description of Robert Koch. 6 is asking where did those 2 people and ideas come from, and the time period is industrial England, or you might refer to it as the 18th and 19th century. Either of those answers are fine. Number 7 is a description of the Berlin Ultimatum, one of the key causes of the construction of the Berlin Wall and the Second Berlin Crisis. 8 is a description of the Paris Summit, another event from the Second Berlin Crisis. 9 is a description of President John F. Kennedy. 10 is a description of Hitler's Reich Church, the Protestant parts of Christianity that actually supported and collaborated with the Nazis. 11 is a description of the undesirables, the people who Hitler sent to concentration camps. And 12 is a description of the Schutzstaffel, but you might also refer to them as the SS or Black Shirts. All 3 names are for the same organisation. Brilliant. So please make sure you've self-checked and corrected any ones you didn't get right. Let's take a look at the focus of today's lesson. So today you're going to look at what was the main reason William of Normandy won the Battle of Hastings. Now, I want you to think back from the 2 lessons you did last week at home with what do you already know. Can you pause the video and just make a bullet point list from memory without peeking at any notes? And can you list the reasons William won the battle? What can you remember? Pause the video and write that down now. Fantastic. Right, what we're going to do then now in today's lesson is we're going to prepare for you to write a longer answer based on this question. So we're going to take 2 steps. We're going to first make notes on everything we can remember about those different reasons you've just come up with. We're going to write down why they are strong reasons that William might have won the battle, but also what are the counter-arguments or limitations on those ideas. Then, once we've recapped all the different reasons, we're going to start to come up with our conclusions. So by that I mean we're going to make links and comparisons between those different reasons to find out which one we think was the main reason. So like I said earlier, all of this today is going to be on a piece of paper. So can you get your paper in front of you now and take a look at this table I've got here. I just turn on this camera. Here's one I made earlier. So on your piece of paper, can you copy out this table here? So at the very top you'll see it says, mistakes made by King Harold and the Anglo-Saxon army. You'll also see in the top right it says William's leadership and tactics. You'll see the Norman army being stronger than Anglo-Saxons. And in the bottom right, you'll see luck. Now in the bottom of each section, you've also got the word however, where we're going to take a look at those limitations. Can you please pause the video now and copy this table? Right, now that you've got the table copied, we're going to start off the table together so you know what to do. Then you're going to have the opportunity to kind of work your memory again and independently have a go at remembering everything you can about why William won. Now this is where I'd like you to have those two colour pens. So then just in the corner in one colour, I've done it here in blue. Can you write the word memory? And in another colour, I've done it here in black, support. And we're going to work our memory all the way through this task. Now we're going to start together with the mistakes made by King Harold and the Anglo-Saxon army. So in this box here, I would like you to write down every single thing you can remember about the mistakes made by King Harold and the Anglo-Saxon army. Try and be specific, try and be precise, work everything out of your memory from last week's lessons as you can, but pause the video now and write in what you can in your memory colour. Go. Pause the video now. Brilliant. Now that you've done that, we're going to go through this box together. So can you change to your with support colour? Because I'm going to ask you to add anything you missed first time. So we're going to write down all the mistakes made by King Harold and the Anglo-Saxon army that helped William to win the battle. Now the first mistake we learned about last week was that Harold Godwinson and his army chose to leave the safe fortified walls of London. So we can write that down first. Chose to leave the safe fortified walls of London. And it's likely, if Harold Godwinson had stayed there, then it would have been much easier for him to defend himself against the Norman attacks. The other mistake we learned about last week was that his men chased the Norman feigned retreat. And that was the thing that allowed this previously quite strong shield wall to become broken. So another mistake he made that allowed William to win was that the King Harold's men chased William of Normandy's feigned retreat breaking his shield wall. Or should we say breaking the Anglo-Saxon shield wall. Excellent. Now for the type of answer we're going to write next lesson, we need to make sure we've got balance all the way through. Now, what I mean by balance is when we're looking at these different reasons why William won, we need to look at the strengths of those arguments, but also the weaknesses. What we often call the limitations on the argument. So, I'd like you to switch back to your from memory colour. For me, it would be blue. Can you write in here any reason why you could say these things were not mistakes made by King Harold? Or why they might not be the strongest reason why William won? Again, pause the video, have a think, and write down what you can think of here. Fantastic. Right, can you switch back now to your with support colour? Again, for me it's black. Now there are a few different ways we can say, or there are a few different reasons why we could say that it wasn't mistakes made by Harold that allowed William to win. First of all, we could say this first point actually wasn't a mistake. Harold left the fortified walls of London because of the atrocities William was committing in his old earldom of Wessex. He had to leave London to protect his people. So we can write that down as one limitation on this reason, is that leaving London wasn't a mistake, as Harold had to leave to protect his people from the atrocities. Again, we can also, on the second point as well, say chasing a fleeing army was common practice at this time. So again, that wasn't really a mistake. It's what any other army would likely do when they saw the enemy running away. So again, we can say chasing the feigned retreat. Oops, sorry, I spelled that wrong. Chasing the feigned retreat was not a mistake. It was a common strategy at the time. So in our planning there, we've now got balance. We've got why you could argue that yes, it was a mistake made by King Harold and the Anglo-Saxon army, and you could definitely say that definitely contributed to William's victory. But we've also taken into account the opposing views, the limitations on that, and why you could argue against that point. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is again, pause the video. I'd like you to take around 10 or 15 minutes thinking as hard as you can in your first colour pen again, your from memory one. And I'd like you to write everything you can remember about William's leadership and his military tactics. And in here, write all the different reasons why they helped him to win the Battle of Hastings. Then, underneath, are there any counter-arguments or limitations on why it wasn't about leadership and tactics? What can you write about the Norman army being stronger than the Anglo-Saxons? What facts can you use to prove that? What details, keywords, how can you prove that? What are the arguments against it? And then finally, how can you argue it was luck that allowed William to win? And what was the argument against luck being the key reason? Please now pause the video, and in your from memory colour, can you write down every single thing you can remember about those different reasons? Brilliant. Right, here's one I've prepared earlier so we can go through and develop what you've got there already. Can you switch to your with support colour? So like I say, with me, it's black. And I'm going to read through the ideas that I've come up with, which I would like you to now add to your piece of paper. If your boxes are already overflowing and are full, that's brilliant. If you just get a spare or a bit of scrap and any ideas that can't fit on your table, if you just do a star and a number, you'll be able to write it on your scrap paper and refer back to it next lesson when we actually do our writing. Okay, so with your support colour or your support pen in hand, here are a few ideas you can add to the leadership and tactics section if you miss them first time. Now, you could say William's leadership helped him to win because it was his leadership that allowed him to take 800 cavalry knights across the Channel Sea, which was more than had ever been done before. This was a huge success and strength to William's leadership, as it's not thought that any other military leader had done so in that many numbers before. You can also say William's leadership and tactics helped him to win because of the feigned retreat strategy. Now, this was the thing that broke Harold's shield wall. Without this, it's unlikely that he would have been able to break through the defences of the Anglo-Saxons. So the feigned retreat strategy was a tactic that really helped him to win. Now, another example of William's success in leadership was the fact that he bravely removed his helmet when rumours of his death spread, which helped him to inspire his troops. So you've got the idea that he bravely removed his helmet in response to those rumours, leading to his men being more inspired and fighting harder all the way to the Anglo-Saxons being defeated. Finally, William's leadership and tactics helped him to help the battle start in the first place because it was the atrocities him and his men were committing in Wessex that allowed them to lure Harold Godwinson from the safety of the fortified walls in London. So those atrocities were certainly a key tactic in allowing the battle to even take place. Now, in terms of limitations, we can say that actually this wasn't the key reason why William won the battle, because his cavalry were ineffective in charging up Coldback Hill. And the strategy that William used at first had very little effect because his horses couldn't get up to full speed charging uphill, meaning at the opening stages of the battle, they couldn't break through the Anglo-Saxon shield wall. So not all of William's tactics, not all of his leadership decisions helped them to win the battle. Some of them failed. From here, we're now going to move on to the Norman army being stronger than the Anglo-Saxons. Again, make sure you've got your with support colour pen in your hand. Now, we could say that the main reason why William won was because he had a stronger army. If we were to make this argument, we could talk about him having 800 well-trained knights. These knights were on cavalry on horseback. Now, these soldiers were stronger than the Anglo-Saxons because being on the back of horses gave them a height advantage. It gave them a speed advantage, but also these knights were very experienced and very well trained. The Normans also had the benefit of crossbowmen and the gonfanon. Now, you might remember the gonfanon was the flags which the soldiers carried, allowing them to pass messages to their soldiers quickly. It meant if there were a change of tactics or an instruction that needed to be spread, it could be done very quickly in a time without things like radios. A really good bit of subject knowledge to mention would be the 4,000 to 6,000 mercenary troops that the Normans had fighting on their side, as well as a papal banner given to them by the Pope, convincing the soldiers to fight because they thought they were on the side of God, giving William the legitimacy. Now, again, in this type of question, you do need balance. So these are the different ways you could argue that actually this isn't true. The ways you can say the Norman army were not stronger than the Anglo-Saxons. Now, the first point you could make is that it seems likely that the Anglo-Saxons actually had more men. It's thought that the Anglo-Saxons and Harold Godwinson had 6,000 to 7,000 members of the Fyrd, Fens and Housecarls. So in terms of sheer numbers, it seems likely that the Anglo-Saxons had more. You could also say that the Anglo-Saxons were using the sort of equipment that should have meant that they were quite well suited to fight the Normans, especially the cavalry. Because we know many of the Anglo-Saxons had the heavy axes that could be used to decapitate horses. So maybe you can argue that the Normans were not the ones with the strongest army, maybe the Anglo-Saxons did. Now, the final factor we've been looking at in why William of Normandy won the battle was the role played by luck. Now, the first way in which William of Normandy may have been lucky is the fact that the wind changed at the right time. Now, the Norman army were actually placed on the northern coast of Normandy, waiting to invade England. But throughout the summer of 1066, the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, and they were unable to make a proper crossing. And in fact, what this meant was that the Anglo-Saxons, because the Normans were delayed, the Anglo-Saxons had to fight the Vikings first, because the wind blowing in that direction actually helped the Vikings make their crossing. This meant that there were earlier battles at the Battle of Gate Fulford and the Battle of Stamford Bridge, tiring out the Anglo-Saxons, meaning those men had to march all that way north, killing many of their soldiers. Then the wind, luckily for William, changed at the right time. He was able to make the crossing when the Anglo-Saxons were fighting in the north of England. The Anglo-Saxons then had to march all the way down, meaning they were tired. You could also argue that William was lucky because of the arrow hitting King Harold in the eye. In a battle like that, it's unlikely, or very, very difficult at least, to aim a shot into a crowded group of people, not knowing who you're going to hit, not knowing you're going to be able to hit the leader especially. So you could say the Normans were lucky that they were able to hit the king and kill him that way. However, again, you could argue that it wasn't luck why William won, because the battle had basically already been lost by the time King Harold was killed. It's likely that even if that arrow hadn't hit him in the eye, he would have been killed in some other way. So the arrow hitting him, we can't, purely say it was down to luck. Because if that hadn't have happened, because the Anglo-Saxons were surrounded at that point, it's very, very likely that they'd have been defeated in some other way. Brilliant. Now, you should have a really full piece of paper. You should have 2 colour pens, one from memory, one from support, so me or your teacher can see which bits you knew before, but we're also going to be able to see which bits you've been able to fill in and improve. Now that we've got all that information down and planned, we're going to take a step into the second part of today's lesson, which is looking at our conclusions. Because now that we've looked at the thinking behind all these different reasons, we need to come up with our own judgment about which one we think was the one that helped William to win the most. Now, to do this, I'd like you to turn your piece of paper over, or get a new piece, and I'd like you to just write those 4 different reasons spread out like this, giving space for us to make connections in between them. So the first one were the mistakes made by Harold, William's leadership and tactics, the strength of the Norman army, and luck. Please write these on your piece of paper now. Pause the video and unpause when you've done it. Excellent. So again, we're going to do one of these together, then you're going to have a go at doing some more yourself. So what we need to do is start to make comparisons or links between these reasons to see what the relationship between them are. We might find that some of these things actually caused each other or were related to one another. And the more connections we can make, the easier it's going to be for us to see which one was the main thing that caused William to win the battle. So one example could be the fact that Harold's mistakes were often caused by William's leadership. So for example, we can make a connection between these two here. And we can say that William's tactics caused the mistakes made by King Harold. So, for example, it was the atrocities in Wessex which caused him to leave London. And it was also the tactic of the feigned retreat which caused the breakup of the Shield Wall. So you can make the argument that without William's tactics and leadership, Harold wouldn't have made those mistakes. Now, what I'd like you to do is pause the video, and I'd like you to try and make as many of these connections as possible. Pause the video now and have a go at coming up with your own connections. Okay, I'm going to give you just 2 more examples of these to give you a little bit more support, and then I'm going to push you to come up with as many more connections as you can, leading you to come up with your own opinion about why William won the Battle of Hastings. So another one you could say is that it was the strength of the Norman army that allowed William to have such effective tactics. So the way we can make this connection is we can say his tactic of the feigned retreat would have been impossible if he didn't have the cavalry, because normal soldiers would not be able to run away and loop around so quickly. They had to be on horses for that to work. So here again we can say the feigned retreat would have been impossible without the speed of the Norman cavalry. Another link we can make is actually luck created the opportunity for William's leadership. Earlier we said his tactic of the atrocities in Wessex were the thing that drew Harold Godwinson out of the fortified walls of London. But if the winds had changed earlier, then when the Normans crossed the Channel, they would have bumped into the Fyrd, who were stationed on the southern coast throughout the summer of 1066. His leadership and tactics would not have worked without the luck of the wind changing at the best time. So here we can say the atrocities in Wessex might not have been effective if the wind had changed earlier when the Anglo-Saxon army was still on the south coast. Right, so hopefully that's kind of given you a few more ideas. What I'd like you to do now again is pause the video and make as many of these connections as possible. I'm also going to put on the screen some sentence starters and keywords which will hopefully help you to make as many of these links as you can. So pause the video on these keywords and phrases, read them carefully, and try and fill the page with as many of these connections as you can, helping to give you some clues about which one you think is the main reason William won. Brilliant. Now that you've done that, you will hopefully have in your head your own idea about which one of those reasons you think played the biggest role in helping William win the Battle of Hastings. You all might have different ideas, and that's good. That's what history is about. It's about debate, it's about disagreement, but it's about basing your opinion on a really good understanding of what actually happened. And after filling in and doing those steps, you should have that understanding now. Now, what you need to do is submit photographs of the work you've just done through Google Classroom. If you don't know how to do that, I've copied a link to another YouTube video which gives you instructions about what to do. Get that submitted, but then keep a hold of the paper of that planning, because in your next lesson later this week, that will be posted on Wednesday, we're going to do a piece of writing using all that information. And if you've got that completed work in front of you, the writing will be much, much easier. Thank you for your hard work today. Thank you for engaging, and thank you for persevering. Keep at it. I'll speak to you later this week. Now go outside and get some fresh air. It's good to catch up.